The CEO laughed when she saw the single dad step onto the plane in his faded jacket and worn-out shoes, but minutes later, the entire cabin went silent when the pilot walked out and revealed who that poorly dressed man really was. Daniel Carter had learned long ago that people often judged a man by what he wore, not by what he carried in his heart. That morning, he carried something far more valuable than an expensive suitcase, a small pink backpack belonging to his 8-year-old daughter, Emma, who was traveling with him to attend her first medical appointment in another city. Daniel was 38, a widowed father who worked 2 jobs just to keep a roof over their heads. His old brown jacket had belonged to his father, his shoes had been repaired twice, and his inexpensive watch had stopped working months ago. But every morning, Daniel still dressed carefully because he wanted Emma to believe that dignity had nothing to do with money. He had saved for months for their plane tickets, refusing to let his daughter see how difficult things had become. Emma sat beside him near the window, holding her stuffed rabbit and smiling nervously as the plane prepared for takeoff. Across the aisle sat Victoria Hayes, a powerful CEO known for her luxury lifestyle and ruthless business reputation. She wore a perfectly tailored cream suit, carried an expensive handbag, and had the confidence of someone accustomed to being obeyed. When she noticed Daniel's faded clothes, her expression changed. She looked him over, then glanced at her companion with an amused smile. Within moments, her comments made it clear that she believed Daniel had no business sitting in the same premium cabin. Daniel heard every word, but he said nothing. He simply looked down at Emma, who had started noticing the tension. That was the moment Daniel made his choice. He would not allow his daughter to learn that kindness depended on wealth. He quietly placed his hand over hers and reassured her with a smile. He had faced worse than humiliation. He had stood beside his wife's hospital bed during her final days, held Emma while explaining that her mother was not coming home, and then worked through exhaustion because grief did not stop rent from being due. His old clothes were not a source of shame to him. They were proof that he had kept going. If you believe kindness matters more than money and that everyone deserves a second chance, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, leave a comment, and subscribe to Bright Heart. Your support helps stories like this reach people who need a little more hope in their day. As the plane climbed through the clouds, Emma suddenly began feeling nervous about her upcoming appointment. Daniel reached into his bag and pulled out a tiny paper butterfly he had made for her. He told her that whenever she felt scared, she should hold it and remember that butterflies became strong by surviving difficult transformations. Victoria overheard him. For the first time, her expression softened, but she quickly looked away. About 40 minutes into the flight, the captain's voice came over the speakers. The cabin crew became unusually attentive, and a senior flight attendant walked toward Daniel. She leaned down and quietly asked him if he was ready. Victoria looked confused. Daniel nodded calmly. A few minutes later, the cockpit door opened. The pilot stepped into the cabin. He was an older man with silver hair and a calm expression. Instead of walking toward first-class passengers or speaking to the crew, he went directly to Daniel. He shook his hand warmly, then looked at Emma with genuine affection. The cabin became strangely quiet. The pilot then explained that Daniel was not simply a struggling father traveling with his daughter. Years earlier, Daniel had been one of the aviation industry's most respected engineers. He had helped design a critical safety system used by the very airline they were flying on. When his wife became seriously ill, Daniel had walked away from a prestigious career to care for her and raise Emma. He had refused promotions, turned down lucrative contracts, and eventually accepted ordinary work because his family needed him more than the corporate world did. Then came the revelation that stunned Victoria. The airline's board had recently offered Daniel the position of chief safety consultant because the company had discovered that several of its most important innovations had been based on his original designs. The pilot himself had worked with Daniel years earlier and had never forgotten the man who stayed late helping junior engineers while refusing recognition. Victoria's face slowly changed. She looked at Daniel's worn jacket again, but this time she saw something completely different. She saw sacrifice. She saw responsibility. She saw a father who had given up comfort so his daughter could have a future. She stood, walked over, and quietly apologized. There was no arrogance left in her voice. Daniel accepted her apology without bitterness. He told her that everyone sometimes made mistakes, but what mattered was whether they had the courage to recognize them. Emma looked up at Victoria and offered her the little paper butterfly. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. She had spent years building companies, buying beautiful things, and measuring success in numbers. Yet a little girl with a handmade butterfly had just reminded her of something she had almost forgotten: the most valuable things in life could never be purchased. When the plane landed, Daniel did not walk away feeling like a wealthy man or a successful engineer. He simply held Emma's hand and watched her smile. That was enough. The next morning, Daniel accepted the safety consultant position, not for the money, but because he knew his work could protect thousands of families just like his own. And Victoria changed too. She began treating people differently, especially those who had nothing impressive written on their clothes.